that Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud he narrates this. قال حدثنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هو الصادق المصدوق, that he was a sadiq, he was the being of pure truth, al-masduq, and everything he said turned out to be true and to be verified. Alright? Another way you can say this, وَهُوَ الصَّادِقُ الْمَصْدُوقُ, is that he was the ultimate being of truth, and masduq, that Allah Ta'ala informed him of the truth. So this would be a way that Sayyidina Abdullah bin Mas'ud is trying to trace the son of this hadith back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran that Sayyidina Rasulullah does not speak of his own accord. He only speaks from a wahi that Allah Ta'ala reveals to him. And that applies to the hadith as well. Alright? The difference between hadith and Quran, just so you know, is that the Quran is wahi, lafzan and ma'na. That Allah Ta'ala reveals the meaning and the particular choice. That's called Quran. Hadith means that Allah Ta'ala reveals the meaning, but Allah Ta'ala does not reveal the expression, the words. And Sayyidina Rasulullah on his own expresses the meaning and the particular. That is also a very interesting act of nubuwwah. And this is something Allah Ta'ala tasks the prophets with. That you will receive meanings, and hadith means that Allah Ta'ala reveals the meaning, but Allah Ta'ala does not reveal the expression of the words. And Sayyidina Rasulullah on his own explain those divinely meanings and the words of the people. And this is why Sayyidina Rasulullah tasks the prophets with. That you will receive meanings, and hadith means that Allah Ta'ala reveals the meaning, but Allah Ta'ala does not reveal the expression in of itself is not indication that there's any weakness in that hadith, because Sayyidina Rasulullah would express the same meaning in the same hadith using slightly different variants or words. Just like any teacher will not exactly speak the same lecture on his own explain that there's any weakness even the exact same meaning because Sayyidina word for word we may not use the exact same sentences, but the meaning will be the same that is conveyed. How many? Fair, that was just a small point in Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud words. So, the hadith of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that the creation of each and every one of you remains in the womb of their mother for 40 days. In the form of, and the actual Arabic word here, I don't know which translation you have, but the Arabic word is nutfa. Nutfa would be what today we would call fertilized ovum. Alright? So for 40 days it is merely just a fertilized, when the sperm and the egg meet, and that is a fertilized ovum. For 4 days it stays like that. Right now, that's a separate topic for separate speakers because I'm not a scientist, but people talk a lot about the embryology. And then it becomes an alaka. Now the notion is here somehow, basically the key is a sense of growth. So for 40 days it's a fertilized ovum, and then there's a sense of growth, and people translate all. It goes from fertilized ovum to nascent embryo. ثُمَّ يَكُونُ مُضْغَةً. Mudgha is the sense that you have formation of limbs, flesh, and muscle. There is now some shape, visible anatomical features of the human embryo. Alright, so these are the 3 sets of 40 days, and then you have basically a total of 120 days. Then Allah Ta'ala sends an angel. Alright? And then when the angel is sent, the angel فَيَنْفُخُ فِيهِ الرُّوحِ, the angel comes and infuses that anatomically now human embryo with its ruh, with the soul and spirit of that human being. Alright. And then وَيُؤْمَنُ بِأَرْبَعٍ كَلِمَاتٍ, and then that angel is commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with 4 kalimat, that means 4 sentences, but with 4 matters pertaining to that human being. Number 1 is the appointing of the rizq of that human being. The rizq means sustenance, nourishment, earning of that person. وَأَجَلِهِ, and then the time period of that human being. وَأَمَلِهِ, and the actions of that period. وَشَقِيٌّ أَوْ سَعِيدٌ, and will that human being be wretched or blessed? And what will be their outcome on the Day of Judgment? This part of the hadith is not actually why Imam Nawawi has brought this hadith in Bab al-Khawf. Those of you who dwell on this part, we have a whole separate lecture on free will and predestination, but that is not the topic for right now. Alright? But I will just mention this to you that obviously Allah Ta'ala knows everything. Let's just put it that way. One response to the whole free will predestination paradox would be that, okay, would your solution rather be this, that Allah Ta'ala does not know your future? That is against our understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being Al-Alim, who's all-knowing. Would it be a solution for you to say Allah Ta'ala does not know whether I'm going to Jannah or Jahannam? How could you say something like that about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He does not know? Obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows these things, and it's Allah Ta'ala's, it's entirely within Allah Ta'ala's domain if He wishes to share that knowledge with the angel who is sent to blow the ruh into that anatomical human embryo at 120 days. Alright? فَوَالَّذِي لَا إِلَهَ غَيْرُهُ. Then Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he took qasam in the being, that there is no God except for that being, and he took qasam in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this is, the following words are why Imam Nawawi chose to open his Bab al-Khawf with this. What? Inna ahadakum la ya'malu bi'amali of Jannah, who lives a life according to the life that would be led by a person who would end up in Jannah, hatta ma yakunu bainahu wa bainaha illa dhira'un. So much that there is between him and that Jannah one dhira'. Dhira' is arm length. Dhira' is from the tips of your finger to your elbow. That's one dhira'. Some people have 1 cubit, 1 arm length, 1 yard. Means he's that close to Jannah. He's lived a life and a lifestyle to the amal that will lead to Jannah, such that he becomes so close to becoming a person of Jannah. إِلَّا ذِرَعٌ فَيَسْبُقُ عَلَيْهِ الْكِتَابُ فَيَعْمَلُ بِعَمَلِ أَهْلِ النَّارِ فَيَدْخُلُهَا. And then what happens is that his destiny, kitab here means what that angel knew, that he would be Shaqi or Sa'id. So in this case, is that angel knew that he would be Shaqi, and he ends up encountering, could say his destiny encounters him and overwhelms him, and then what does he do? He does a deed of the people of the fire of Jahannam. Bi'amali ahli nar. He does one act like that. And what does it mean? One act. This is the fear, that a lifetime of good can be erased by one act, if Allah Ta'ala chooses to reckon a person for that act. Now, it's not necessary that this happens to everybody. Otherwise, obviously, every one of us has one sin, if not many, many more, right? This is not a qaida kulliya that any one sin that you have will eradicate any and all good deeds that you do. But there will be some people like that. And other hadith of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which Imam Nawawi doesn't bring in this bab, suggests that this will be more prevalent towards the end of time. More prevalent in times of fitan, in fitnas. So that a person was doing the a'mal of Jannah and they did one act. Alright? But on the other hand, similarly, the Prophet was talking to the whole ummah, that one of you will do the acts of the people who will end up as denizens of the fire of Jahannam, such that between you and Jahannam there will be one dhira', 1 arm's length, and then that person's destiny, which was to be Sa'id, to be from the blessed, will overwhelm him, will overcome him, such that he actually does one act of the people of Jannah, and then he will enter into Jannah by consequence of that act. Alright? But again, it's the first aspect of this that Imam Nawawi is bringing to instill the fear inside a person. Alright? And that is that basically you never know which sin that might be. Right? And if a person actually thought about every sin, that this could be that amal, this could be that amal that we talked about this in this hadith, this could be that amal that actually enters me into the fire of Jahannam, therefore I better not do it. And basically that is also the tone Imam Nawawi was setting by bringing this hadith first. The purpose, the entire and sole and important purpose of fear of Allah Ta'ala is to stop a person from sinful deeds. That's the purpose of fear. It's not a feeling in of itself. It's a feeling for this reason. For this reason. Alright? Then Imam Nawawi, second hadith that he brings, again on the narrator is Abdullah bin Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala anhu, that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that on the day of judgment, Jahannam, the fire of hell, will be brought with 70,000 reins, Nagam. This is to show the enormity of hellfire. Now, this hadith can and should and must be taken literally also, and it can simultaneously also be taken figuratively. It is just mentioning the immense size of the fire of Jannah, right? Now, what does this mean to bring the fire? This is all in the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if you were to do 70,000 times 70,000, I can't remember, maybe it's like 4.9 billion or something. Huh? Billion or million? 49 million. 49 million angels. So this in itself, this hadith gives us knowledge that there's hundreds of millions of angels, right? Or maybe billions of angels. 49 million angels on that day will be tasked with presenting Jahannam to the people on the day of judgment. Now what you have here basically is two sets of hadith. You have a whole other hadith that talk about Jahannam being presented, Jahannam being brought. Then you have hadith that talk about the person being cast into Jahannam, the person being tossed into Jahannam. So it's like a mutual two-way encounter, which is more intense. For you to fall into the fire while the fire was falling upon you. So this is the intensity of it, the immense size of it requires 70,000 reins, and the raging inferno aspect of it, that to even keep in control one part over 70,000 of Jahannam, it requires the strength of 70,000. Eager to leap out and consume those people standing there on the day of judgment who are shabi. Allahu Akbar Kabira. This second hadith is then talking about the fear of the punishment of the fire of Jahannam. And you have to understand, this is something Allah subhanahu in Quran and Sayyidina Rasulullah do repeatedly. Give us vivid, graphic description in the heart of a person. The next hadith is on the authority of An-Nu'man ibn Bashir radiallahu ta'ala, that he narrates that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the person who will be dispensed with the understand that there are levels, just like there are darajat in Jannah. There will be some people who go to Jannah straight without ever having to go into Jannah. There will be a second category of people who go to Jahannam for some time and eventually are taken out and go to Jannah. And there will be a third category of people who go to Jahannam never to exit from it. Three types of people. So from that second category of people, those who will enter the fire of Jahannam and be taken out, what's the shortest period? What's the lightest punishment? This is the hadith of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam on this topic. The person who will be meted out the lightest punishment amongst the people of Jahannam will be the one who have two embers. So not even a flame, not even the fire. Two things that were fuel for the fire. Like Allah Ta'ala mentions in the Quran, that the embers were fuel, or what you say, or the ingen or inden. The things that are burnt is either hijara, rocks, and that's coming also later, hijara, rocks, or nas, or people. Right? Here would be two of the pebbles, I would say. Two of the small, tiny pebbles that were used as fuel for the 5 Jahannam, they will be taken out and they will be placed under the soles of that person's feet. And the heat from them will be such that it will cause his brain to melt. It causes his brain to melt. One, that they are suffering more than him, even though he had actually been given the lightest punishment of all. It's the slightest punishment. So this hadith, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to realize, because that sometimes people think like that okay, they might be misled, that okay, if I have to go to Jannah, at least eventually I'll go to Jannah because of my iman. So a person should have fear, no, I don't want to go that route. A person will say, okay, you just have a few sins, you might only go to Jannah for a short period of time. A person should say, no, I'm still too afraid of that. Say, okay, fine, you will only go to Jahannam for a fraction of a second. A person said, I'm still too afraid of that. I'm still so afraid even of the slightest fraction of a second that I just can't do that sin. I just can't do that sin. Alright? There is a longer discussion in Sirah about, I just mentioned this to what we call Zindan, about the destiny of Sayyidina Abu Talib radiallahu anhu, was the uncle of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I mention this because 99% of you hopefully would not know these things, but it's one of the foul conditions of modernity that people who use their aql, they like to talk about this as well. That will Abu Talib be considered a believer on the Day of Judgment? Did he really actually accept Iman and Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or did he not? So there's another hadith that is narrated by Imam Muslim rahimahullah, in which Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually explicitly mentioned, that's a Sahih hadith, that the lightest punishment of Jahannam will be given to Sayyidina Abu Talib radiallahu anhu. So when you join these two hadiths together, this hadith, and this is also in the Sahih Muslim as well as the Sahih Bukhari that we read out to you. So that means that Sayyidina Abu Talib will be also given this punishment. Alright? Allah knows best, right? But then right after that, right after this momentary fraction of a moment, where these two embers are placed on the soles of the feet and the brains boiled, then immediately after that, he will be admitted entry into Jannah. Alright? Another aspect of this hadith was that at that moment, a person won't view it to be light. So the word is that it is the lightest punishment. But at that moment, it's akhaf, but he will feel like it's ashad. He will feel like it is the most severe punishment. The next hadith is narrated by Samurah ibn Jundub radiallahu anhu, that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the fire, an-nar, the fire of Jannah, will cover people up, some up to their ankles, some up to their knees, some up to their hips, and others up to their collarbones. Now this was interesting hadith, because you would think it would keep going. It stops at the collarbone. Why? Because the most intense punishment in the fire of Jahannam will still allow the person to be able to wail and cry and scream and shriek. And that wouldn't happen if the fire went all the way up to the tip of their head. So the maximum depth will be up to the collarbone. Alright? And as any one of us can understand, being up just to the ankles or just to the knees, that doesn't provide any consolation for anybody. And no one would want to be in it in the slightest degree. So these two hadiths taken together are giving the whole spectrum. Under the soles of the feet, up to ankles, up to knees, up to hips/waist, and up to the collarbone. Alright? However, when you look at the hadith before, if merely placing for a single moment 2 embers was enough to make the blood boil and melt, then surely that person who is ankle deep or knee deep or waist deep, their blood will also be, their brain would be perpetually boiled and melted. Alright? This then brings another hadith, which is not in this bab because that's more hadith specifically about Jahannam, which is known as the sifat, the attributes of the fire of Jahannam, is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will regrow that person's flesh constantly, continually. Flesh, sinew, tendon, bone. Burned and then recreated, and burned and recreated, and this will be instant and infinite. Infinite for the person who dwells therein forever, and it will be instant and repeated for the person who ultimately gets taken out. Then, on the Day of Judgment, what will happen? So the next hadith, this is narrated by Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Yukumun Nas, that the people will be standing, the Rabbil Alameen, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Lord of all of the worlds, in such a way that they will be submerged in their own sweat and perspiration up to half of their ears. Half of the ears. So they're sweating so much, and their sweat will be gathered in them. And their sweat will also be extremely hot on that Day of Judgment. And here, this hadith is yukumun nas. Obviously, there will be some people who Allah takes directly to the shade of the throne, and there are other hadith that give different exceptions. But an ordinary person, even a person who may go straight to Jannah, will be sweating and perspiring so much on the Day of Judgment. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will gather this sweat around them like a sea. Be thinking, right, in our fluid thermodynamics that the water will go away. No, Allah ta'ala, He can part the Red Sea for Nabi. Up, that person will be like in a column or like a cell or a shower of their own sweat and perspiration. Now, the ulama mentioned that this perspiration can be due to two things. One is due to the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and second is due to the heat, that physical heat that will be on the Day of Judgment. The physical heat on the Day of Judgment. And the next hadith narrated by Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam once addressed the Sahaba Ikram in a khutbah, in a religious discourse, an address. And he said to them, "La ta'lamuna ma a'lamu." If only you dhahiktum qalilan wa la bakaytum kathira, that you would laugh less and you would cry more. And then Sayyidina Anas ibn Malik then continues narrating the incident. فَغَطَّ أَصْحَابُ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ وَجُوهَهُمْ وَلَهُمْ خَنِينَ. And then he says that on hearing this, that when the Sahaba Ikram heard this. Now what does this mean? It doesn't mean that they were laughing at this moment when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was talking to them. They were sitting listening to his khutbah, his wa'az, his discourse. But when he told them, right, that there are things that he knows that are so serious, that would make a person so somber, that they would not laugh. They would laugh less and they would cry more. So all of them covered their faces and they began weeping. They covered their faces and began weeping profusely. And another hadith, which has some additional words, is that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam addressed the Sahaba, and before he said this sentence, he first said the following sentence, that Jahannam and Jannah and Jahannam were presented in front of me, and I've never seen a day like this day. If only you knew what I know, you would laugh. Day when Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam was endowed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the vision and knowledge of Jannah and Jahannam, right? And this also reminds us that Jannah and Jahannam pre-exist They are things that were created, what is known as Alam Amr, by the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, kun fayakun. He simply created, he didn't design, there was no gradual process. Unlike the human being, which is 40 days, the fertilized ovum, then 40 days, the embryo, then 40 days, anatomical structure, and etc., all of the stages of human development. Jahannam was created in less than that even. Just kun fayakun. Allah Ta'ala willed it to exist, and it existed with all of its sifat, with all of its levels, with all of its blazing infernos, with all of its features, with all of its punishments. And the same thing for Jannah, that Allah Ta'ala willed it to be simply by His command, and it came into existence with all of its darajat, with all of its bounties and blessings and wonders. These are things created from the command and the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Next hadith, this is from Al-Miqdad radiyallahu anhu, that he says that I heard Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that on the Day of Judgment the sun will be brought close to the creation until it will be 1 meal away from them. The 1 meal can mean mile. Sayyidina Miqdad, he himself elaborates this, that meal can mean mile, which is distance, and meal is also referred to that small stick that is dipped into kohl and used to apply on a person's eyelash. Alright? So that's this much of a distance. Right? So meal can mean this much if it's referring to that poker stick that is used to poke inside the bottle and apply kohl. Or meal can be 1 land distance, which is known as 1 mile. Right? And then Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam then elaborated that the people will be submerged in sweat, perspiration, according to their deeds. Those whose mouths are clenched due to the perspiration and sweat means they will be choking or gargling or gurgling on their own sweat. Alright? Now, interestingly, right now, the sun, according to astronomy, is whatever it was, like 100 million miles, almost 193 million miles if I remember, almost 100 million miles away from the Earth. Safe distance. And on the Day of Judgment, Allah Ta'ala will resurrect the sun, because the sun will also be folded up when the hour will come. And then Allah Ta'ala will bring that sun of the earth that close back to the people on that day. Alright? So again, this is in that hadith is almost near identical, very similar. On the Day of Judgment, people will sweat and perspire to such an extent that their perspiration will seep into the ground as deep as 70 zirah, 70 arms lengths, and it will or suffocate them until it reaches their ears. Alright? This shows how much they will be sweating, that it will seep into the ground so deep. Next hadith by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah that we were with Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam when he suddenly heard the sound of something falling. He asked us, do you know what that was? We replied, and this was the standard way of the Sahaba Kiram reply, Allahu wa Rasuluhu a'lamu, that Allah Ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam know best. So then Sayyidina Rasulullah responded, Hada hajrun rumiya bihi fin nar, that this is a stone, a rock, a boulder cast into the fire of Jahannam mundu sab'ina, from 70 years. You just heard. This up either a perception, sight perception, or oral perception of something that's otherwise unseen. This is called ghaib. Now this was done what we call juz'i. Allah Ta'ala would open up at different times for different reasons some particular aspect of the unseen. And sometimes Allah Ta'ala would open that up only to Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and sometimes that opening would also be for the Sahaba Kiram who were present at that moment with Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So in this case, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those just think on this earth, if there was any big boulder that fell a distance that took, you could work that out in physics, I think you could, distance with gravity. So how long it would take, based on gravity, how far distance that boulder would travel for 70 years. And then what would be the decibels of the impact, it depends on the size of the boulder and the whatever density of the rock, when it hit the ground. But you can imagine it would be what we would simply call an earth-shattering sound. It would be an extremely loud sound. And Allah Ta'ala chose to unveil that sound. Now what is this? This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stoking the fires of Jahannam. وَأَعَدَّ لَهُمْ been stoking the fires of Jahannam in preparation for those who will be Ashabul. Is something that Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam they heard, right? And this is, you can consider this a mu'jiza. Because anything that happens miraculously means only purely to the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and khilaf ada, contrary to the norm, is known as a mu'jiza. Then, in the next hadith, narrated by Adi ibn Hatim radiyallahu anhu, narrated Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, okay, ما منكم من أحد إلا سيكلمه ربه ليس بينه وبينه ترجمان. That there is not a single one of you that Allah Ta'ala will speak to you on the day of judgment in such a way that there will not be between you and between him tarjuman. There will not be any interpreter, translator, any mediator between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَيَنْظُرُ أَيْمَنَ مِنْهُ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. You will look towards your right and you will not be able to see anything except that which preceded you, means your deeds that you had sent forth, it means your life. وَيَنْظُرُ أَسْأَمَ مِنْهُ فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا مَا قَدَّمَ. And you will look to your left and again you will not be able to see anything except for the deeds that you had sent forward. Then وَيَنْظُرُ بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ, which means you will look in front of you. فَلَا يَرَى إِلَّا النَّارِ. You will not see anything except the fire of Jahannam. تِلْقَاءَ وَجْهِهِ, that it is directly facing you. You will feel that its wajh is towards you, that it is in Sabah. Then Nabi Kareem Sallallahu, that you should fear the fire of Jahannam even if it is with a portion of a day. That you can seek salvation from the fire of Jahannam even by indulging in small amounts of charity, small amounts of good deed. Alright? Here again, this is a very intense statement that a person will self. And this will be something that happens to a person. Like I told you, it's very intense and there's still a lot more. Right? But I'm going to we will do the same thing. We will give you the complete, inshallah ta'ala, Babu Raja or Bab on hope in Allah Ta'ala's mercy. Alright? Next hadith is narrated by Sayyidina Abu Dhar al-Ghafari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that he narrates that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Inni ara ma la taraw. That indeed I am able to perceive that which you cannot. I am able to perceive that which you cannot. And what did the Prophet say? It's a metaphor. It's something that he was able to perceive. The sky groans, and it has every right to groan. Or you could even say the sky wails, and it has every right to be groan, would be better. The sky groans, and it has every right to groan. There is not an empty space of even 4 fingers width without an angel placing his forehead in sujood, in prostration before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Nabi Kareem Sallallahu swore by Allah ta'ala, if you knew what I knew, you would laugh little and cry much. You would not take any delight from women in beds, and you would go onto the paths and streets seeking the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what does this mean? Number one is that the sky is filled with angels who perform righteous actions, who are performing sujood. Imam Shafi'i, based on this hadith, he took the fiqhi position, because this was also something that the fuqaha had a discussion about, that what is afdal as-sama am al-ard? What is afdal, the sky or the earth? So because of this, he said the sky is afdal because the sky has the sujood of the malaika and the earth has the sujood of insan. Alright? So there's so many angels in the skies who are doing sajda. Interesting, because some of you might know that the Judeo-Christian concept of heaven was that it was in the clouds, right? Our concept of heaven is something that entirely transcends the entire physical universe. It's not on the clouds, it's not in the atmosphere, it's not in the solar system, it's not in the Milky Way galaxy, it's not in the entire created realm of matter and energy. It's something beyond that, it's a different realm of Allah Ta'ala. Hence he referred to himself as, in Quran, as Rabbul Alameen. It's a different alam. It's a different world altogether, a different realm of existence. But Allah Ta'ala has sent the angels down to worship Him as they worship Him around His arsh. They also worship Him on the sky of this very planet Earth. Alright? So this planet Earth is blessed in that sense. And so the angels, and there's so many, the sky is filled with the angels that there's no space for, that's hardly anything, 4 fingers width, except that the angels are making sajda to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alright? Next hadith is narrated by Sayyidina Abu Barza radiallahu ta'ala, that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that a person's feet will not move. La tazulu qadama abdin. The 2 feet of a person will not be able to move from their place yawm al-qiyamah, on the day of judgment, hatta yus'ala an umrihi fima afnahu, until they're asked about their life, the life that was an amana that they lived, and how you can say how they spent it, but fima afnahu, what were they fana'in in their life? What did they drown their life in? What did they dwell upon? What was the crux and the ultimate purpose of their life? Number 1. Number 2, wa'an ilmihi. And number 2, based on their knowledge. Fima fa'ala fihi, and how they practiced upon that knowledge. And number 4, وَعَنْ مَالِهِ مِنْ أَيْنَ اكْتَسَبَهُ. And first thing asked about their wealth will be from whence did they earn it, وَفِي مَنْ فَقَهُ, and how did they spend it. The practice of it, their earning and their spending. 5 things that they will be asked way before they can even move. Number 6, وَعَنْ جِسْمِهِ Fima ablahu, and on their body, and how they tired their body out, or how they exerted their body. In what did they exert their body such that they got tired? For example, every day at night we feel tired, therefore we go to sleep. So we must have done something in the day. How did we exert our physical self such that we were tired? And then again, Allah Ta'ala gave us energy. And then again, how did we exert our energy? Alright? So this was actually related to this. Where did you earn? How did you spend the money? And the money that you didn't spend, it means you consumed it for your own nourishment. How did you spend that energy? How did you spend the energy that you got from your rizq? Alright? Then the next hadith narrated by Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 hadith left. Final 4 hadith in this bab of khawf. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah narrated, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited the ayah in Quran, again often recited because it's in the 30th juz, يَوْمَ أَذٍ تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا. This is that day on which the earth and the pieces of land on which a person lived and committed acts, good deeds or otherwise. تُحَدِّثُ أَخْبَارَهَا will do hadith, will narrate all of its news about. And then Sayyidina Rasulullah addressing the Sahaba, then he asked that, do you know what that is? أَتَدْرُونَ مَا أَخْبَارَهَا? Do you understand what that is? So the Sahaba said, no best. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the akhbar, the khabar, the news, abdin aw amatin, it will bear witness on every male or female slave and bondsman, bondwoman of Allah subhanahu bima amila ala dhahriha, about what that person did on its back. Literally means what that person did on that earth. Every single, your bedroom, in your house, and the land, their property. And people are so attached to their property and they love their property, little do they know that this very same property is going to testify against them to Allah Ta'ala on the Day of Judgment. And tell that person everything they did, the dorm room, the bedroom, everything. Bear witness to Allah Ta'ala, this is what this person did upon me. And it will say to that person that you committed such and such action on such and such day, and Nabi Kareem Sallallahu, that is its khabar, that is the news that it will give. Alright? And so the notion here is also that even the earth feels fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even the earth will feel fearful of Allah Ta'ala when a person does sin upon it, and it will testify to Allah Ta'ala about that person. Then the next hadith, narrated by Sayyidina Abu Sayyid al-Khudri radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Kayfa an'um, that how can I be happy or enjoy or be pleased about life? Wa sahib al-qarni qad intaqama al-qarn, that sahib al-qarn is that particular angel who is the sahib of the zaman, means the angel Israfil basically, alayhi salam, who is going to blow the horn to signal the end of time. And that he has already placed it on his mouth. Because see, me and you, we think it's something really that's going to take place a long time in the future, right? And that might be true. And a person could even argue on the basis of hadith that there's so many alamat of Yawm al-Qiyamah that still haven't come, and therefore it's far off. To pick on the students, right? If you get a really hardcore studious student, right, then they prepare for their exam significantly in advance. So the best example of this that you probably have in this country is the medical students who prepare for the USMLEs. So I say, my USMLE such as it come in, it's 4 months from now. So I say to them, 4 months from now, come and listen to hadith, it's 4 months from now. They just said, no, I couldn't come because my USMLEs are coming up. So he used the word coming up, a sense of imminence for something that's going to take place, as far as I'm concerned, ba'id, far away from now. Why? Because of the fear of feeling that coming later, he feels it now. He feels it now. That's how a person is supposed to feel about the Day of Judgment. It's coming later, but I feel it now. It's going to come later, but I feel it now. So this is what Sayyidina Rasulullah, this is how he felt. This is a sunnah. This is a sunnah feeling, to feel the imminence. Because there's no delay. The second meaning is that when Israfil preparation time given, there's not going to be any warning horn. There's not going to be any snooze button. He would just blow in the horn and then it will all be over. Alright? And he has turned his ear in order to listen to the hukam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَاسْتَمَعْ إِذْنَا مَتَى يُؤْمَرُ بِالنَّفْخِ فَيَنْفُخ. He is turning his ear, listening intently that when will Allah Ta'ala give me the command. So he's in anticipation of the command to blow. And then Sayyidina Abu Sayyid al-Khudri narrates about what effect this happened on the Sahaba. فَكَأَنَّ ذَلَكَ ثَقُلَ عَلَى أَصْحَابِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. And this weighed heavily. This statement of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam weighed heavily on the hearts of his companions, radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajmain. قولوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. And look, all you have to do is say حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل. Allahu Akbar. Means take solace from these words. Take solace from this zikr. And remember that Allah Ta'ala is sufficient for us and He is the best of wakil. What does it mean here? That Allah Ta'ala will be the wakil of the muttaqeen against the fire of Jahannam. Allah Ta'ala will be the wakil of the muttaqeen against the trauma and trials of the Day of Judgment that will take place on the blowing of the horn. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakil. So it shows also that Sayyidina Rasulullah did not leave them in that state of fear. He always channeled that fear, right? Second to last hadith. Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, he narrates that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, that person who fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is expensive, and the commodity of Allah ta'ala means what Allah ta'ala is offering. That which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is offering has a steep price, and what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is offering is nothing other than Jannah. So what is the first thing? The first thing is Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is using a metaphor of traveling. And basically, if you have to, another hadith, the Prophet said that he strongly preferred that people travel in the day and not travel in the night. But if a person travels in the night, if he leaves early in the night, he will reach his destination by morning. Right? So what the person is saying, what does early in the night mean? It means youth. That if you adopt fear in your youth, early on, then you will be able to travel and journey successfully and reach the destination of taqwa. And if you delay it, like if you delay your journey to the middle of the night or the last portion of the night, then you won't reach your destination in time. Alright? And then the second part was that simply that Jannah is costly and it means it takes a lot of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a lot of a'mal salih for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said, وَإِنَّ اللَّهَ اشْتَرَىٰ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ أَنفُسَهُمْ وَأَمْوَالَهُمْ بِأَنَّ لَهُمُ الْجَنَّةِ. Right? So it can be a means of costly that Allah ta'ala purchased in exchange for Jannah. Right? So it's a price you pay that you give up yourself and you give up your possessions. You give up yourself means you give up all of your wishes, desires, dreams, personalities, preferences, if they conflict with the will and wish of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you perfectly hold on to all of your dreams and wishes and personalities that are not in any way against the commandment and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the last hadith that Imam Nawawi brought in Bab al-Khawf, narrated by al-Mu'minin Sayyida Aisha radiyallahu anha, and she narrates that she heard Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, يُحْشَرُ النَّاسُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ حُفَاةً, that the people will be all gathered on the day of judgment in such a state that they are, number one, barefooted, urat, and they will be unclothed, ghurla, and they will be uncircumcised. Alright? So she asked, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, الرجال والنساء جميعا ينظر بعضهم إلى بعض, so that there will be men and women together, and some will be looking at one another. فقال سيدنا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, Ya Aisha, O beloved Aisha, al-amru ashaddu, this matter of being raised in the Day of Judgment will be ashad, will be more severe, will be more intense, will be so serious that they will be too serious for them to be concerned with any such desires, right? And what the hadith is an ashara, and this is why I told you Imam Nawawi's purpose was that khawf is to change amal. That you're unable to feel these desires anymore. And that's what Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was saying. That they won't be able to have this desire to look at one another. Why? Because they'll be gripped by the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's the nature of fear. Again, the person who is gripped by fear will no longer be able to feel the by that fear. And that's where a lot of us lack. Alright? Just one last thing about the hadith, but the hadith has always been understood in the Islamic tradition to be literal. And it literally means, and the notion of that is like how Allah Ta'ala says that we will raise you up as we created you awwala marra. So baby is also awwala marra, baby is barefoot, unclothed, and then uncircumcised. So you'll be stripped to your bare humanity. Obviously there are many more hadith of Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam on this topic. But Imam Nawawi in his wisdom as a great muhaddith and alim of deen felt that this selection sufficed, and it was his husn zan about people like me and you, that this selection of ayat and ahadith would suffice to instill the feeling of fear in our hearts. So we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that may Allah accept the husn zan of Imam Nawawi and make indeed these selection of ayat Qur'aniyah and ahadith and nabawiyah sufficient to instill that true gripping fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala heart. And inshallah next Thursday then we will do Bab al-Raja, which is the chapter on hope. I actually did that chapter of combining fear and hope. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. Ya Allah, we ask that you forgive us for all the acts that we've done. We are mustahiq nar, we've earned the fire of Jahannam. We have so many sins, Ya Rabb, that you could pick from any one of them. Fill our hearts with fear, increase our hearts with fear. Ya Allah, we have so many other fears in our heart. Remove the false fear, Allah. Grant us the true fear, Allah. Make us fearful of the day of judgment. Make us fearful of its punishment. Make us fearful of its heat. Make us fearful of the mizan. Make us fearful of the grave. Make us fearful of you, Ya Rabbi Kareem. Make us fearful of being disappointing to you. Make us fearful of being disloyal to you. Make us fearful of being untrue to you. Make us fearful of being deprived of your nearness if we are in Jahannam. Ya Rabbi, that is the true fear, Ya Allah. That Jahannam is hot and Jahannam is everything. But Jahannam is bathed from you, and Jannat is qareeb to your arsh. Ya Rabbi Kareem, just like in this world, you selected us for this ummah. You made us mu'mineen, you made us muslimeen, you brought us qareeb to Quran, qareeb to Sunnah. Ya Rabbi, we ask that you grant us tawfiq to live a life that in akhirah again we will be qareeb to you, qareeb to Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, qareeb to all Sahaba Ikram radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, qareeb to these mufassirin, muhaddiseen, fuqaha, usuliyin, awliya, sadiqeen. Ya Allah, Ya Rabbi Kareem, Ya Rabbi, ask that you grant us amal, grant us tawfiq to do amal, grant us ikhlas in our amal. Sin, Ya Rabbi Kareem, let the fear overwhelm us and protect us from unlawful desire, protect us from unlawful feeling, Ya Rabbi Kareem. Ya Rabbi, we ask that you give us tawfiq to laugh less and to cry more. We ask that you give us tawfiq, Ya Rabbi, to learn our deen, learn your kalam, learn the kalam of your beloved Nabi Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Ya Rabbi Kareem, there are so many youth here, Ya Rabbi. It is a possibility for them. They can begin this journey in the early portion of their night. Ya Rabbi Kareem, grant them tawfiq, Ya Allah. They came knowing that this would be the topic. They came seeking your fear. Ya Rabbi Kareem, surely, Ya Rabbi, when you grant the seeker of your love, surely you will grant the seeker of your fear, Ya Rabbi Kareem. Ya Rabbi, make us from the khaifeen, make us from the khashi'een. Ya Rabbi Kareem, make us from the mushfiqeen. Increase us in every aspect of fear, every angle of fear, every tenor of fear, every tone of fear. And Ya Rabbi Kareem, put in our heart a fear of sin, Put in our heart a fear of ghafla. Put in our heart a fear of disobedience, Ya Rabbi Kareem. Allah, protect us from the fire of Jahannam. Protect us from the punishment of Jahannam. Protect us from the flames of Jahannam. Protect us from the embers and fuels of Jahannam. Protect us from, Ya Rabbi, even the cool breeze from Jannah, the tender breeze from Jannah, the fragrant breeze from Jannah. Give us tawfiq to walk on this earth, Ya Rabb, the paths that lead to Jannah, the way of life that leads to Jannah, Ya Rabb. Allahumma inna nas'aluka minka jannatul firdaus, wa na'udhu bika minan nar. Allahumma ajirna minan nar. Allahumma ajirna minan nar. Allahumma ajirna minan nar. Ya Kareem, Ya Ghaffar. Ya Rabbi Kareem, we make dua for all of our friends and family, all of our near and dear ones, for all of the ummah, Ya Rabbi Kareem. If there's even one person in this ummah who is walking the path of fire, Ya Rabbi Kareem, rescue them, Ya Rabb, guide them, Ya Rabb, uplift them, Ya Rabb. Ya Rabbi, we make dua for all of An-Nas, all of Insan. Ya Rabbi Kareem, send your hidayah on them. You are Al-Hadi, Ya Rabb. Guide all of their hearts, Ya Rabbi Kareem. Guide them to the nur of Iman. Guide them to the nur of Islam, guide them to the nur of taqwa, guide them to the nur of haya. Ya Rabbi Kareem, give them the gift of your hidayah, as you have given so many millions hidayah in the past. Ya Rabbi Kareem, give tawfiq, Ya Rabb. Raise the deen again, raise it from the west, raise it from the east, raise it in the young, raise it in the old. Ya Rabbi Kareem, we make dua for the elderly, Ya Rabb, those who are coming close to their grave and still they have no fear of you. Ya Rabbi Kareem, instill fear in their heart.